Hi everyone, welcome to your next module. Today we're going to be setting up all of your annotations. So we're going to be going through text, we're going to go through dimensions, we're also going to go through something called a multileader, which is a piece of text that has an arrow associated with it. This is good for annotating details. Each of these things has a lot of settings that we're going to have to go through one by one, but we only have to do this once, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but then once we've done it, we'll be able to fully annotate anything. To format our text, we're going to go up into the ribbon. We're going to come across from home to the Annotate tab. This is where all our annotative tools and settings are stored. Within this text panel at the beginning, we're going to click on this little arrow, which is going to bring up our text style dialog. Within here, we're going to hit New. I'm going to name our new text style something. My tendency is to name it with my initials and then text. Hit OK. Here we can then set current, and then we can choose a font. I would recommend either leaving it on Arial or choosing something that is sans serif and simple. Think about construction documents and how standard that text tends to be. So I'm going to leave that on regular. Do not click annotative. Make sure annotative is not clicked. I'm going to leave height at 0. We're going to leave all of these unticked. Width factor 1, oblique angle that. And then we're going to hit OK. The next thing we're going to set up is our multileaders. So multileader is a piece of text with an arrow associated with it. So again, in the Annotate tab, we're in our Leaders section, we've got a little arrow. It's going to bring up our Multileader Style Manager dialog. And we're going to go New. And again, we're going to go and name this LG. We're going to specify a height for this one, which is going to be 2 mil text. We're going to start with standard. Make sure you do not start with annotative. This then brings 3 tabs worth of settings up. If you refer to the PDF available on my uni that's called Annotation Settings, this has got a screenshot version of this process for you if you would like a still version. I'm going to do this on screen, but if you want to follow along with something that's static, you can use that PDF. And now, last but not least, we are going to format all of our dimension settings. So again, still in the Annotate tab, but in the Dimensions area, we go to our little arrow here. It will bring up our Dimension Style Manager. So again, we're going to go New. Again, we're going to start with standard. Make sure we're not ticking annotative, and we continue. And again, we've got 7, 8 tabs worth of settings here. Again, one of the PDFs available on my uni. It's called Dimension Settings. If you would like a static version of this to follow along with, that is available for you to follow along with instead of following me on screen here. Make sure when you have finished formatting those that you set yours to current. What you see now is when we come back up to this ribbon, in your text, you'll see your text name here. In your dimensions, you'll see your dimensions name here, and in your leaders, you'll see your leader name there. That's how you know that you've formatted and set all of them to current, so that when you use each of those tools, they will be the ones that are being used. Now that we have set all of our text up, we will be able to move into paper space and begin to annotate our drawings. So to begin, we're going to come down to our Layout and Model tabs. We're going to click on Layout 1. This should bring up our sheet which we previously set up. If you haven't set this up yet, pop back and do the other module before doing this. The first thing I'm going to do before creating any text is check my layers. So I'm currently on Xenoplot. I'm going to come up, double click on text 1, make sure that that is my current layer, and then I'm going to engage the text tool. This can be done several different ways. We can come up to the ribbon and into the within the Annotate tab in the text section. We've got the drop down where we can choose multi-line or single line text. For your sheet here, your title block, I would recommend using single line text. Once we have engaged that tool, we can specify the start point of text. So this is where we want our text to begin from. Looking at the command bar, it's saying specify a height. I would recommend starting with 2.5 mil. It's then asking for a rotation of text. We want that to go straight across the page, so it's a 0, and then enter. It's then providing us with a cursor here that you can see, so we can begin to fill this out. You can start with name. And with single line text, once you've created the first line, you can hit enter. This will then allow you to continue to type the next, a new line of text, or you can hit enter again and it will end that tool. The other way that you can engage that text tool is using the shortcut DT and then enter. And again, it's then asking you to specify the start point of your text. Once you've created a piece of text, that is now its own object, so you can select it. You've then got its properties, so you can change the layer it's on. You can even change the height if you decide that you want to make that a little bigger or maybe a little smaller. You can also move it with the Move tool. You can also grab this control point and move it around. Now I have Ortho on, but not O-snaps. If I had O-snaps on, that will then start to snap into the corners of my title block, nice and neat, and then I can start to decide exactly where I want this to sit. I know that it is now 2 mil high because I changed it to 2 mil. I want it to sit 3 mil below that title block, and then away from the edge of that by another 2 mil. Down a bit further. Again, this title block can look however you want it to look. It just needs to contain the same information as the example one that is on my uni. Once you've created that first piece of text, I would recommend just copying that down. So you can copy that down. It's now something you can copy, you can rotate it. If you want to change what's inside it, you can double click on it and it'll start to give you a new cursor that you can just retype with. And then again, of course, you can select it and you can change the height of it. So I would recommend making sure that you don't make any text that is smaller than 2 mil. 2 mil is about the limit on being able to be legible. And then when you start getting around 5 mil, that's quite big text if you think about it when it's down on a page. Now that I've got that first set of title and filled out, I'm going to copy that again. And if you copy it and you're using O-snaps, it means that this will sit in exactly the same place within each section. And then you can just go in and refill each of these with the required things that are in that original title block. As you can see here, all of this text is specific to this page, so as we would have for our original hand drawing, it's now sheet title plan, it's 1 to 100, it's sheet number 1. Now, we also need to put the remainder of the text onto this sheet. So if we come back and have a quick look-see at our hand-drawn example, we've got all of the dimensions, we've got these detail references, we've got this text that's inside here, we've also got a drawing title. So all of these texts can just be done in the way that we just did the title block, and the dimensions, and this guy with the arrow, this is going to be a multi-leader. So we're going to run through those now. So we're going to start with the first string of dimensions, the one that's going across the top of the building here. Remember, we want to be in paper space. We do not want to have the viewport activated. We want to be in paper space. And we need to check our layer first. So we're currently on text. We want all of our dimensions to be on dim 1. Then we engage the dimension tool by coming up to the dimensions section within the Annotate tab. Now there are several different types of dimension. If you click the drop down under linear, you're given all of these options. All of the ones that we're going to be doing today are going to be linear because they're all at right angles to the building. They're the most simple one to be doing. Once we engage that tool, it's telling us to specify the first extension line origin. So that means the point that we're actually measuring from, but not where we want the dimension to sit. So we're going to start here, and then we're going to click the second line origin. Now, when you do this, just remember that you're dimensioning to structural things. So we don't want to be measuring to the inside line of the window frame. We want to be dimensioning to that wall edge there. And as we come up, it's then asking us where we want to place it. So we're going to pick a spot where we want it to sit, and then we have our dimension. This is now an object, just like text. So if you want to tweak where you're placing it, you can grab it and move it. I've got O snaps on, so it's being a little bit difficult. And again, you can erase it, you can even rotate it, but you can tell where it's dimensioning from and how accurate it is by where these origin points are. Once we've done one of these dimensions, we can continue to use the linear tool to then zoom in and come from that point to this point, and we've got our next dimension. We'll make sure we're sitting it next to that first one, so this is all nice and neat. The other option we've got is to use the continue dimensions tool. So within this tab, we've got something called continue here. When we click on that, that will just continue that string of dimensions from the last one that you made. So that's just a slightly quicker way, so we only have to be selecting that next one as we come across. It's just one click instead of the two, and then enter to end, and we've got our first string of dimensions. The last annotation item we haven't made yet is the multi-leader. So again, in the Annotate tab, across to multi-leader. Before we hit that, we want to make sure we're on the right layer. So we want our multi-leaders to be on text. So we're going to double click on text to make sure we're on text, and then we're going to come up to the multi-leader tool, click on that. It's then telling us to specify the leader arrowhead location. So we want this to be pointing onto this roof overhang, and then it's asking us to specify the landing location, so that's where we want the text to begin, and then it's giving us the cursor, allowing us to type. All of your text should be in capital letters, remember, with architecture, except for units, which are allowed to be in lowercase. Now, the thing about the multi-leader is that this is multi-line text here, so this will just continue to do a very long single line if you continue to type. If you grab these little arrows and pull it out, it will automatically start creating little paragraphs for you. When you're done, you can just click away, and then we've got our multi-leader there. And again, just like with the dimensions, this is now an object, so you can select it, you know what layer it's on, it's got settings that you can alter if you want to. You can also grab these control points and move it around. I've got ortho on, so it's only going to go up and down. The text will move, obviously, as you can see, independently of that arrow, so you can start to nudge this around to get this to appear the way you want it to sit against your drawing. This is more important when you have multiple annotations, like on your section detail. When you start to do that type of thing, remember that you can create a line that you can then use to snap to. So it's like a guideline that you would draw by hand. If you put it on the no plot layer, you can leave it there indefinitely and it won't print. But what it will allow you to do is to snap and then move your dimension neatly along a line, and you always know that it's in that position along that line, all nice, neatly lined up together when you've got more than one. last thing we'll go over is just, again, that text tool. So the thing that really is missing from this is the drawing title and the text that's in here. Again, just to reiterate, you can come up to your text tool, or you can go DT and hit enter. You can specify that start point of text. If your OSnap is messing you around a little bit, you can just turn that off, and then you can place that wherever you want. It's going to ask you to specify a height. So you can do this graphically if you want, but I really would recommend you just put in a number instead. And then the angle of that text is 0. And then, again, you can just type. And again, with that single line text, you can hit enter, and then you can continue to type. Hit enter again. These will be 2 different single line objects, but it allows you to create more than one at once. And then, of course, we can match these around with the move tool and edit. I've forgotten to put the FFL. And match these around. So there are 2 more things that we're just going to run through that are kind of annotations. They're the last kind of detail objects that you need to know how to create to finish off everything in your drawings. The first thing we're going to run through is hatching. So we're going to pop back to the model tab, and we're going to come up to the section. What we're missing from this is a couple of different things. We've got a pattern that needs to go into the slab, and we've also got a representation of insulation, which looks like a pattern that needs to go into the wall. So to hatch something, we need to first of all make sure that we're on our hatch layer. And we've got a couple of different options here. So sometimes we want a hatch to be red, sometimes we want it to be a grey colour. So I'm going to start off with 252 because that's a grey colour. I think that the concrete hatch will look better in a grey, but again, that's up to you because it's your drawing. To create a hatch, we come up to the hatch tool. This essentially fills an area with a pattern. So you can see here, wherever an area is a closed area, it will allow you to create a pattern. So for instance, in this slab. What this does mean is that if something has not been drawn quite right, so for instance, if I trim this line back and it's now not a closed area, when I come back to hatch and I hover in there, it won't let me fill it with a hatch because it's not fully enclosed. So it's important that you're drawing very neatly to ensure there aren't any tiny little secret gaps in your drawing that you don't know about that won't allow you to hatch. The other thing that you need to know about hatches is that it's best if you can see the entire area that you're trying to fill. So if I kind of crop my view down so I can't see all of this, it's going to have a harder time filling it because it can't see fully on the screen the whole boundary. Now it can do it. So it's just a matter of making sure that you've drawn it neatly and that you can see the whole area that you want to hatch. If you're following along with those guidelines, when you hover and you've got the area you want to fill, we get to select it. It's now highlighted that area and it's permanently there. You've then up here got all of your options for that hatch. The first section is pattern. So we want to be filling the slab with concrete, which is AR Conc. And you can see when you zoom in now, it's got a little concrete hatch pattern in there. The other couple of settings in here are scale. So if you want to change the size of that pattern, it's the scale of it. You make it a little smaller if you want it. I think 1 was probably actually appropriate. You've also got an angle, which will change the angle, the rotation angle of that. So it will rotate it around. It's not so important with this concrete hatch, but it will be with some other hatches that we will use. Once you're done, you can close that hatch creation and you can close it down. That's now, of course, it's an object. Now, when you select it, it's going to bring you back up all your settings again, so you can change the pattern if you want. The other thing you'll note up the top there is that associative is highlighted. So if you unassociate that, you are given a little bit more control over, you've got some control points that you can customize that boundary with a little bit. What it will mean is that it won't automatically update if you change the shape that it's bounded by, which is what associative is for typically. And the last thing we're going to go through is the insulation. So there is a couple of different patterns that sit in the wall here. So there is a line one. So actually we'll just pop that line in while we're here. So we're going to go to the hatch. We're going to come into patterns. We're going to find the correct line one that I reckon we should be using. I think it's this one. It's going to be a little double line. It's a bit too close together. So let's say make that 5, 10. Now you see that's actually 3 lines, so that's not the one I want. That one. This is a double line, so double line is brick. 10 looks about right for me. And we can just leave that on associated, don't need to change it. And done. The last pattern that's in that wall is the insulation. So the insulation is a wiggly line that sits in this section. That is not created using a hatch, it's created using a line that we then give a special line type to. So if we come over to our layers and we're going to make the current layer insulation, you might remember when we created this layer we associated batting to it instead of dashed or continuous. So that's the special line type that's going to create a wiggly line for us. So we come up to our line tool. When we draw a line on that layer, you will see, this is that wiggly line. So we are going to draw that line in place. I'm going to make sure I've got my snaps on, starting there and coming down. But this isn't the right size in here. So we're going to control this using the line type scale that we've been using a couple of different times for viewing of that roof dash. But remember when we were looking at the roof dash in model space versus paper space, it looked different. What we need to do is make sure that we're looking at this in paper space when we're deciding what line type scale we are using. Now, the next module is going to go over setting up more of these layout pages for us. But for now, I'm just going to pull my viewport up here and zoom in. So we can see that when we're in paper space at 1 to 100, which is the same scale as the plan, which is what it will look like in paper space on its own sheet when we get to that in the next module. But here you can't see the wiggly line at all. So what I don't want to do is change the global line type again. The global line type is what we use to change this dash, but I want that dash to stay the way that it is currently. So what we're going to do is, this is the exception to selecting and changing a property. This is the only time that you ever do this, is that you are fine to change line type scale here. So this is different to the global line type. This is specific to this object. So if we change this, say, to 10, we still can't see it. We make it 100, still can't see it. 1,000, no, okay, let's go the other way, 0.1. There we go, okay. So that's too big. So if we go to 0.05, it's a little bit too big, 0.04. So this is what I mean. Line type scale can be a little bit trial and error, but we went big, couldn't find it, went small, found it. So if we make the line type scale for that object 0.04, that's then appearing the way that I want it to appear. It's sitting there nice and neat. When we come back out again, I'm going to deactivate that viewport, bring it back down to where it was before because I don't want to see it on my sheet 1. When we come back to this in model space, we don't see the wiggle in model space, but we know that we can see it in paper space, and that's the important spot because that's where that's the way it's going to print, and so we don't mind that we can't see it here. We know that this line is fully set up accurately though, so we've got more insulation as we come up around here. The way I'm going to do this is by drawing a new line on that layer, but I'm going to come down to this one and I'm going to use match properties. So I'm going to click match properties. It's telling us to select the source object. I want everything to match this one. So I'm going to match it to that one. Now I know that this line has exactly the same settings as this one, and that in paper space it will eventually come out exactly right.